got about 20 minutes to get to work. Ended up spending time trying to set up a YouTube account last night for this. I often end up forgetting to take the pills that are the ones for after the meal, and I have a hypothesis that when I skip the finasteride over days because I fix your DHT, that cause spikes up and spikes down DHT, which is increasing my acne, which I've been noticing lately. I'm gonna be running about 3 minutes late or so to work, which bugs me. I don't know if it bugs me. If it bugged me, then I wouldn't do it. Anyway, got woken up at 9 last night due to the fact that mom and dad are leaving this morning to be able to help mom with her phone. Got her email set up on the phone, her Microsoft Authenticator app set up, and did that for about like an hour and a half, 2 hours. 8 enchiladas. Then I went upstairs, worked on the computer for like an hour to create the channel for this. I'm going about 85 here. It bothers me so much that they have put it down to 60 on this one road. It's not 60 yet, but it's going to be 60 up here. It used to be 70 all the way through. Anyway, I'm going to be a minute or two late, so I'm going to text Jane because, I don't know, maybe I shouldn't have taken a shower this morning, but I did. My hope is to be able to get all done at the hotel, manage my time well so that I can get all the things done with laundry that I need to, as well as be able to spend an hour editing this video, or yesterday's video actually, and then also be able to spend an hour editing the skydiving video, and be able to get over to the house, spend from like 4 to 5 packing up boxes. I packed up the bathroom yesterday. That wasn't on camera, but if I can get a chunk done there, then I can come back to the farmhouse and I can use that TSP wash on the outside of the RV so that I can get the residue from the graphics off. And then once I've done that, maybe I can spend like an hour researching what kind of custom graphics a person can buy to advertise their social medias on an RV. Yeah. Alright, that's it. Okay, it took a little bit longer. I was a lot busier at work than I was thinking, and I ended up working on the clock until 5 and then worked like half an hour after that. Didn't get any editing done due to the fact that I was pretty much working the entire time. And Jane actually ended up, when she came in for groceries, she helped fold laundry for a bit, but there's county music fair, so I didn't get anything done for editing wise. Didn't even eat, I'm so hungry. I just re-had a thought that I had had before. Oftentimes, as I'm in the workplace, I will see certain things and I will try to internalize those observations or lessons, knowing that there'll be some point in my future where those lessons are going to be valuable, especially from the perspective of someone who's, quote, the worker. You're not going to have the same perspective when you're the manager or operator. And so I'm trying to register and take note of these observations. From the perspective of the manager slash operator, oftentimes there are individuals who are, quote, good producers or have a high level of productive output. Let's say they are 10% more effective than everyone. However, that individual, the ego that drives them to be good at their job is the same ego that makes all of their coworkers miserable. And actually, even though their productivity is higher, their ego that they bring into the workplace pulls down the net productivity of the entirety of the team by 10%. So if you're looking at the entire team and they're one of a 10-member team, if their productivity goes up,
10%, that's 1% change in productivity for the entirety of the team. But if that person's ego makes the rest of the members on the team so miserable, or that creates a work environment that is negative for people and draws down their productivity by a total of 10% each, then actually your net loss of productivity is 9%. Even though from the perspective of the manager operator, they view it as, oh, this person is so effective at what they're doing, they're not able to see the impact that it's having on the collective team, right? And the manager operator, the foremost, I mean, I suppose some people are going to care about the living conditions or the work conditions of their workers, but if you're a good manager operator, you are thinking about the bottom line and the bottom total output. And obviously how your workers feel or their mental and emotional health is going to have an output on that bottom line. But as a manager slash operator, you need to be most concerned with your team's net productivity output. I think that sometimes you don't realize how one supposedly superstar is affecting other people. And I'm just kind of reminded of that. Not necessarily how I am affected by this one particular person, but I see how multiple other people in the workplace are affected by this person negatively in a way that is causing their productivity to be diminished. So I guess that's a lesson for today. I don't know how I'm going to edit that down concisely. Just watch this video. Is it going to focus or not? It doesn't even matter. People spend so much. There you go. Look, see that? People spend so much time in videos trying to get it to focus, and it's like nobody cares. And here I am. From 1,000 to 8 million. Sebastian Giorgio, whatever his name is. It's wild, bro. That video is wild. It's interesting through this guy who I think 10 months ago, not 9, 10 months ago, 6 months ago, I don't know how many months ago, I saw one of his thumbnails on flipping NFTs, and I saved the video, but never watched it, which is interesting because back when I first saw Eric, I saw his channel, and his channel had to have been at 20, maybe 40K. I saw one of the thumbnails, and I thought, bruh, this is so good. I saw the thumbnail, and I knew before I clicked it that it's going to be good. Not because of how hyped the thumbnail was, but how well done the thumbnail was. I knew that there was no way that someone would be this good at making a thumbnail and then would be that bad at making a video. Anyway, and then he's just blowing up and it's crazy. He has blown up and it's crazy. He's trying to hit 10 mil, do the Pizza Hut party. That's such a good sponsorship as well. Pizza Hut and him, because from the beginning, not from the beginning, but pretty early on, his brand has been pretty heavily integrated with pizza. Anyway, but Sebastian Giorgio, I watched his video, whatever it was, about a month or 2 ago, first watched one, and then I saw his video with Iman Gadzhi, and that is literally one of the large reasons as to why I ended up actually starting this, because you get to see his video way back from when he is 16, and you get to see his mindset then, and where he wanted to position himself and where he was headed. And I don't know, that was insane to me. That was super wild, and I wanted something to be able to look back on, and if other people ever found it, for other people to look back on, see from where to where and where a person's head was, where is their mindset at, and what are the things, the actions that you are taking in your life on a daily basis to continually push you forward. Anyway, I have gone to the store, grabbed some waters, and actually did some packing in Noah's bedroom, took some of Noah's clothes and put it in one of the milk crates to take downstairs. But I wanted to talk a little bit on that last clip talking about Iman Gadzhi, or the videos of when he's 17, and how I think I was wanting to say one specific word, but I was abstaining from saying that word, and that word is inspire. And I really shy away from using the word inspire, I think, because in my mind, inspiration or being inspired is a touchy-feely emotional thing, and that conveys weakness in my mind. And so then I don't want to use that word, even if it's kind of the best word in that scenario to use. And I think that probably the fact that inspiration or being inspired is emotional and therefore weak is probably just my preconceived notions of what being inspired is, because if you're inspired, then that wells up emotions within you and then you do nothing based upon those, that's weakness. Or it's just, it's laziness, it's being pathetic and weak. I think that recently, I've been learning that while emotions are a form of weakness because they give others control over you, because if others can have an impact on your emotions, they can have an impact on your actions, right? So others can control you by affecting your emotions. But at the same time, I've also learned that emotions are strength, because what leads to action? Emotion. The word emotion is thought that leads to action, motion, right? And so I think for a lot of my life, I have, again, going back to my desire not to be controlled by others, has led me to stray away from emotion and emotions, and then all I have left to push myself forward is willpower and mental energy. And our willpower and mental energy is finite. Obviously, you can train your willpower up over time, but emotions are reactionary to circumstances, right? And as long as you have that reaction, that thought reaction to that circumstance, you can have the motivation to take the required action, right? So that's the entire thing of Ray Clear, the neuroscience of self-discipline. It's how do you create mental images in your mind that lead to a drastic emotional response, and then you channel that emotional response into action, right? And that's essentially their strategy, their methodology for motivation when it's not inherent or intrinsic. And so I've realized that separating myself from my emotions made me stronger, because I think other people had less control over me because they couldn't say things that would affect my emotions and therefore affect my actions, right? But I think in a certain sense it's made me weaker because I don't have an alternative energy source to tap into, to pull out that 101% out of me. And this is just something I've been thinking about. And everything, there's pluses and minuses, and everything there's trade-offs. And it's just reminded me of the fact that there are many means and methods to many different endpoints. And there's more than one way to reach the goal that a person desires. And going back to the idea of what makes you, quote, stronger is putting yourself through difficult circumstances, is, quote, cutting yourself off from certain emotions. Does that make you weaker because you are protecting yourself from unfavorable circumstances? So you're shutting yourself off from suffering, and that is causing you to be weaker overall because your tolerance to suffering is decreased. So in your objective to be stronger, are you actually making yourself weaker mentally because you're not putting yourself through suffering? I don't know. Actually, I think a person needs to put in the caveat, do you overcome suffering or are you overcome by suffering, right? Plenty of people I know who have gone through an incredible amount of suffering, but that doesn't mean they're strong people. They've gone through suffering but stayed weak because they focused on me, my life's hard, and they were overcome by that suffering. They were obsessed with the idea of their own unpleasant circumstances and how it was too bad for them. And the world had wronged them, and they were able to sulk in their self-pity. And that doesn't make you stronger. So if you don't overcome the suffering that you're going through, then going through the suffering to become stronger is meaningless, because the strengthening aspect of going through the suffering was defeated, and you're not any stronger for it if the suffering conquered you, as opposed to you conquering the suffering. Every time that, metal is gone through a forge and it's heated and there are bents made into it and then it's bent back and hardened again, that's only what makes it harder. If the metal is cracked and does not re-harden in the proper way, it won't be stronger, it'll just be weaker. And so going through that crucible, you have to make sure that you're coming out stronger on the other side of it. So I think a person can't just put themselves into suffering haphazardly and then expect to be stronger. Maybe some of the time you will come stronger out of it, but you need to put yourself through the suffering with the singular goal in mind to overcome that suffering, for that suffering to actually be beneficial in making you stronger. Also, I realize this is relatively niche piece of information. However, when removing it was pretty difficult to find this, surprisingly. When removing graphics from an RV, what you want to do is use a heat gun, right? Now, the other ones were curled up on the sides. So for that type, you can use a heat gun, you can take a scraper, get up the edge, and you're able to pull it off, right? You will be surprised, you need to do it pretty quickly after you have heated it up. 10 seconds go by, it's pretty difficult to get off. It heats up the adhesive and allows it to separate. If it is cracked, what you need to do is heat it up with the heat gun, scrape off what comes off easily, then use TSP powder, which is going to look like this. This is the non-phosphate version, which is supposedly, non-toxic to animals, etc., yada yada. It's just what was there, it was like $5. And then you can use the TSP powder after you get a rag wet. You get the rag wet, you dip it in the TSP powder, otherwise you need to mix it with the water, which creates a bleach-like solution. But this way it's a little bit more contained, supposedly, from what I've watched. I haven't even done it. And then you can rub it on the vehicle like that to try to get rid of any spots. Now, this is relatively volatile, so a person shouldn't do it to a super large area before you actually see what the results are like, because again, this is used for cleaning areas that are going to be painted. So hypothetically, if it was a weak enough paint with a strong enough concentration of the solution, you could actually damage some of the paint if that wasn't your intention to repaint. Okay? Now what I'm curious, that right there. Now, I'm not supposed to get all these drips, supposedly, but that's coming off, yeah, pretty easily. Yeah, that's working really well. Now, a person's not supposed to let it drip because it can leave marks, I suppose. But what I'm curious about is if it can fix other areas of the RV. But I don't know. I'm trying to remember if the video said anything about wiping it off with a dry rag. But I'm choosing to do that because I know that if the solution sits in a specific area for a prolonged period of time, the effect that it has on the surface will be greater. So I'm thinking if it's cleaned off when it's cleaned off, I don't need any residual solution sitting on the surface doing any damage that is unnecessary. I'm trying to see if I can breathe any of the fumes, and if I notice it or not. I'm not noticing too much here. Is it just me, or is the area that's been affected a little bit discolored here? No, that discoloration is going away. Yeah. And I think some of this discoloration was due to the fact that it was actually dirty and just having, yeah. Any type of portion of the surface cleaned at all was doing quite a bit of good. Also, another thought that I just had a second ago, we'll see if it comes to me here. Okay, this is what I was going to say. I was going to say, in Buddhism, life is described as being suffering, right? So life is suffering. That's about as far as I go with Buddhism. Don't buy the other stuff. But I do believe that life is suffering. And to live life to a fuller extent, one must suffer more, right? So the fuller extent to which you live life, the greater suffering you are going to encounter. Weak individuals, or individuals who don't want to become stronger, as they go through life, they confront suffering, right? Because life is suffering. And then they shirk back. And they're like, oh, I don't like that. And they choose to live less life, right? They choose to minimize the impact. They choose to limit the full spectrum of experiences that life has to offer and its impact on their lives, right? So if a person wants to live life to the fullest, not only in a experiential sense, but also in a what does one achieve sense, you really need to be a sadomasochist. Like, people who are sadomasochists live life to the fullest. Why? Because they are unafraid of suffering coming towards them and experiencing suffering, and or doling out suffering on others, because that is the very experience of life. So to truly achieve something great, to truly experience life to a great degree, one needs to be okay with experiencing and giving suffering, receiving and giving suffering, because that is the reality of life, right? And so I'm trying to think, like, in my own life, do I get up and think, what suffering can I experience, because that means I'm experiencing life to its fullest? I think a lot of people don't like this concept, and that's fine. That doesn't change whether it's true or not. Bro, okay, listen. When you're using this, it will weaken the texture of the gloves. So I guess it's probably a good idea that I did wear gloves, because it messed them up pretty well. And it would have done the same thing to my hand, I suppose. It is currently now 4 minutes past midnight. It's very interesting listening to yourself talk. I've just been editing yesterday's Building Caleb, and it's very interesting. Obviously, I've edited some of the erratic podcasts for Caleb Kalev channel, but listening to yourself for prolonged periods of time, I'm not going to say you become hyper aware of your own mannerisms, but it's like it's almost like you're more influenced to become a hyper concentrated version of yourself. I'm not in my head per se. I'm in my head about the pauses, actually. That's probably the only part. Like, I realize that, whoa, but I suppose I'm trying to figure out my words, and oftentimes it's hard to articulate yourself well in a concise way in the moment. But it is interesting listening to, like, I'm talking here, and then there's this massive gap or whatever, and I'm just, like, sitting there for, 2 minutes straight just staring at the camera. I can kind of think, probably what's in my head at that moment. But just watching from the outside, it's like, is there anything in? Are you retarded? Are you good? Yeah. It is 5 minutes now past midnight. I washed the RV. I power washed it for a good amount of time. We'll see how well it's done in the morning. I've noticed that when you're power washing it, really the power washer is either A, not strong enough, or I don't know how the physics play into it, but it's able to get the first layer of dirt off, but you really need actually contact and friction, even if it's just with a rag, to get whatever layer of caked on grime that's on there. I mean, I was using the TSP probably more liberally than I needed to, and it's possible that it's partly psychological. I do think I have some very, very mild chemical burns, or at least it was some kind of irritation rash. And then I came inside, and I managed to, it was probably 9:50 by the time I got all cleaned up and came inside. I probably stopped at 9:30. It was probably about 9:50 by the time I cleaned up and came inside. And then I managed to probably screw around for an hour, just unloading the dishwasher and fiddling with my acne in a way that was unnecessary, shall we say. Okay? And that was, managed to probably screw away. Use an hour of time in a way that was unnecessary, even though the dishwasher was good, I guess. Anyway, and I've just been editing since then, so probably editing for, I don't know, an hour and a half now. And then we'll see. If I finish this and manage to get it started uploading at a reasonable time, then I'll probably work on tomorrow's video as well. But also, I'm spending way more time than I would really care to on this. However, I think that as time progresses, I will get it down to more of a science so that I'm able to edit these things and pop them out in a more effective manner. It doesn't help when I go on talking for literally 40 minutes of talking head. Very not helpful to the entire timeliness, time frame thing. It's interesting to think how much should a person actually put in to the video of quote pre-structured behind the scenes, right? Does it make sense for me to include a time lapse? None of this matters, right? This is just in my head, right? So I'm just saying it because it's in my head. I realize it doesn't matter, but there are tons of thoughts in our heads that don't matter enough to quote say them, but we still think them. Maybe that's the key to becoming more efficient, is just weeding out the not only words that don't matter, but the thoughts that don't matter. Does that give you more bandwidth to make high-level decisions? Anyway, should I put the entire thing, should I put like a time lapse of myself editing this video in this one, right? Or is that putting up the third wall too much, and I should only have like a stream of consciousness thoughts for the video? I can do whatever I want. But the question is, does it like ruin the purpose of the video? Bruh, I can do one day, one another day. Who cares? It was interesting also as I can see myself in certain moments trying to grasp a specific word, reaching for it, but I'm unable to get it, and then myself watching the video, I'm able to know what word I was searching for, and yet for whatever reason in that moment, what synapse is not firing, what thought is blocking the access of that specific piece of vocabulary to not be able to say it in that moment. But I was looking for the word, like I used 7 times in one part of the video, sector, sector, sector. And then I couldn't think of sector, so I just like threw in quadrant, right? Quadrant, obviously, well, I guess I technically don't know, but quadrant you would make you think that it's only 4, so it's like saying 3 halves. It doesn't, if you're talking about one whole, you can't say a half. Half of me wants to do this, half of me wants to do this, and half of me wants, you can't do that, technically. You can if you want to. And so I was using sectors, and then for whatever reason, my brain lost that word, and then I was using quadrants, and I could not get back to the word sector. I couldn't think of it. Interesting. We're all fearfully and wonderfully made. Bro, I was just thinking, I'm editing here, and I'm getting tired, I'm getting sleepy, I'm thinking, oh, what if I, finish the editing in the morning? And already I was supposed to do this one last night, and I still need to work on today's. And obviously I think this is just part of getting caught up to speed with getting the science, the formula of popping these out down. And while this isn't the quote work that I think I need to be working on, something did pop into my mind. It's not like I think it's a waste due to the fact that I think it's a good training in like pushing yourself. Like when you're tired or don't feel like doing it, just doesn't matter. Who cares? Keep going. And the thought popped into my mind, like, as hard as you think you are working, or when you think you are working as hard as you possibly can, you cannot work any possibly harder, work harder. Do more. And I say that to myself, and I say that to myself not only as a life philosophy, right? But as a statement of belief as to what I believe I'm capable of. Is too much if you don't say it's too much? Too much is only too much when you make it too much. When you were able to handle it, then it wasn't too much. And so, obviously there are physical limits to what human bodies and brains are capable of. But then how much do the emotions and thoughts of humans limit the capacities of our brains and limit the capacities of our bodies? And how much do we hinder ourselves, How much are we holding ourselves back? I was thinking about the fact that Grandpa Clarence always talked about, I haven't gotten this done or haven't got that done, I'm just worthless. Or he would reference other people, how wonderful they are, and then you're like, why is he saying all this stuff about how this person is so wonderful out of the blue? What generated these warm and fuzzy thoughts and feelings toward this individual? And then you realize, this person is literally a workaholic. And that's what caused my grandfather, Grandpa Clarence, to hold them in as high of an esteem as he did. And he would talk about certain individuals and actually use the word, he's just a workaholic, as a positive word. And in today's society, not saying who's wrong or right, in today's society, that's such a negative thing, and he was using that quote negative term as being like the utmost homage of respect, paying the utmost homage of respect. And I'm thinking about the fact that his well-being, or his feeling of well-being, his self-worth was based upon how much he had been working, or how much he had accomplished, how much he had worked. And I don't know if that's an accurate view to have in life, or even a healthy view, a good view, a positive view, and yet that view's so convenient. And it makes so many other things in life so much easier. Specifically, as I look at my life right now, if my self-worth and ego and value was derived solely from how hard I worked, I have a massive ego. You know, every person has a massive ego, but some of us larger than others. I have a massive ego, and how far would I go? How hard would I work to protect and feed that ego if truly the only thing fueling that ego was how hard I worked? And I feel like, would working feel easier? Nah, I don't know. What I'm thinking right now is, oh my goodness, Caleb, you're making work, the way that you're speaking, make it sound like work is this really difficult thing, and you're you're dedicated a YouTube channel talking about how, no, it's talking about how hard working is, wow. But it's, building myself in the manner I want to be, and I think one of the core tenets of that is how hardworking you are, and I'm over-verbalizing something that really is just a passing thought in my mind and then is primarily action in my life. But, for the sake of this, I'm verbalizing it, maybe in a more thorough way than I would have otherwise. But still, I think as I start through that thought process, like at the beginning, it just makes me think, bruh, you just, shut up and just do. Don't make excuses for it. And then that's probably a good and wise thing to say and think. Okay, it is now 2 a.m. I've edited for a while longer. I still haven't finished and uploaded the video. I was thinking, I should just stay up till 3, 4 a.m. and actually finish uploading the video. However, then I decided tomorrow it's going to mess up my entire sleep schedule, etc., etc., etc. If I don't end up going to sleep now, then I'm going to end up waking up at 12, 1, and then the entire kind of day is going to be thrown off. So I'm just going to go sleep now, and then hopefully first thing in the morning I can get up and work on that. I think there is not a balancing act. I think there is an aspect where a guy needs to remind himself what your register, or what your candor is the point that I'm supposed to be presenting my, not entertainment self, but myself, the version of myself that comes out when I'm around other people, or is the point supposed to be because really this is just for me. There's no one else, I don't have any intention of anyone else seeing this, except 5 years from now. Things are drastically changed. I don't even intend on me seeing this until 5 years from now. So I can look back, and I don't know if I want to look back. I think creating them now, seeing, okay, what happened yesterday, a week ago, yeah, something like that is good for keeping me accountable. I don't often like the reminiscing stuff. Okay, I'm going to sleep. Good night.